for January 4th. I'd like to first of all acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Sycos First Nation, and it's on their land that we live, work, and play. We have an agenda in front of you. Is there any additions or deletions? Okay. Okay, you have the minutes of the January the 10th regular council meeting and the January 17th. To adopt.
Second it.
Resolutions. All in favor? Opposed? Is there any business from the meeting that anybody wanted to speak? Seeing none, I'd like to welcome Sergeant Carl Hushak from the RCMP for the report. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I know we're trying to schedule something for the last little bit, and it's good we can finally get together on this. So last year was fairly busy. We ended up with about 4,200 files last year, which is about 400 more than 2020. The basis on that, from what I've been able to see, is traffic-related files. So it's erratic driver complaints, pretty much anything that moves, someone calls it. That was significantly higher. Another side note, just from what I've seen the last year or two, there's a lot more assist files with warrants for individuals who fail to attend court. For whatever reason, the judicial system has been issuing a lot more endorsed warrants to pick somebody up and give them a new court date. So anytime that happens, if the file is not from Vanderhoof, we have to generate a new file. So that is kind of what I've gleaned where the increase in files have come from. Criminal code files, so approximately 1,161 charges. Criminal code wise were referred to Crown Council last year. Once they go to Crown, it's up to Crown whether they're going to approve the charges and prosecute. I don't have the numbers on what Crown Council did from that. I know there's been numerous weeks canceled due to COVID, so thus is why the warrants are issued sometimes, which brings our file numbers up. Right now, currently, we've got the same contingent as last year, 14 regular members. Was able to sign the CTA with Sycos in November, so that's the next year agreement, just indicating that we're dedicating one constable under federal funding to be the liaison member up there. The annual performance plan will be coming up for renewal every year. April 1st is our kind of fiscal year in the RCP world, so I'll be reaching out to Mayor and Council there to kind of set up the APP for the upcoming year. We are directed from district and Green Timbers as to sometimes mandatories, but it's also good to get the community involved in more local performance issues that we can help out with, because unfortunately Vancouver or Surrey and Ottawa don't really know what's important to the Vanderhoof community, so it's important for us to reach out and get the community's take on what we'd like us to focus on. So for last year, it was improving public safety, so reducing crime through prolific and social offender management, enhanced public safety, so being visible on the road, organizational excellence, that's kind of an internal one, just helping our members develop to be better police officers, integrate better in the community, providing the courses possible to help them with that. Obviously, with COVID, we've had some issues with training, not having those courses available due to in-person training. Improving community relationships, so it's building relationships with the community in Sycos Nation. And then in relation to improving public safety, specifically domestic violence, the restorative justice system, having a in-person victim services referral, that's gone up significantly now with our victim services specifically being located in Vanderhoof. It's a lot easier for her to build relationships with locals and I've noticed in my 15 years that once people become familiar with victim services or certain members in the detachment, you start getting more reports being historical or something we weren't even aware of before. So that's good to have that relationship being built. I know one contentious issue that seems to come up in every detachment is the local average versus provincial average for caseload per regular member. On page 3 in 2020, again, we don't have 2021 stats yet, only because the province compiles them and those haven't been released yet as for what the provincial average per member was. Vanderhoof was slightly higher at 73 versus 69. That has come down from 2017 and 2018 with the addition of a couple members of the detachment. Again, those are just straight criminal code charges. Those don't take into account what Crown does with them. The 2021 comparison just on the top of page 3. So we get emails quarterly from Quality Assurance in Ottawa if there's ever a spike in a certain trend. There was one anomaly, so to say, in the cause disturbance intoxicated persons. That was related to a small group of individuals that kind of migrated to Vanderhoof for the summer that were a drain on resources. Those individuals have migrated out of Vanderhoof, and thus those calls for service have gone down now. So it's unfortunately what we see is just transient activities coming through, and that's kind of the relationship for the cause disturbance and mischief files. Theft of motor vehicles gone down, like more so property crime has gone down, with the exception of the break-in enters. Those are sometimes difficult to investigate, and kind of the same concerns that I had in another area too is you're on a highway where it's very easy for individuals who don't live here to commit break-in enters. They jump on that highway right away and get out of town. So those stats unfortunately are a bit higher, and it's sometimes difficult. Those stats aren't specifically for Vanderhoof, that's the entire area. I know seasonality break-ins to cottages, those get reported more in the summer when individuals start migrating back to the cottages. And unfortunately, I suspect we'll see a spike in those briefly once people start getting back to cottages in the summer. That's it, unless you want me something else. I don't have a problem answering any questions at all.
Any questions?
Kyle, out of the members at 14, does that include the one member that's dedicated to cyclists?
Yes.
So it's two. So you
14 total.
got 13 for here, really.
Yes. Yeah, they're so it's the staff sergeant, 2 corporals, and the 9 constables. So with that being said, the CTA does stipulate that patrols that the member will be up on CICUS for the majority of the time. If there's something in town going on, the expectation is the member will come down and help out.
Another question on the on your chart, the impaired driving RFEs. That's quite a drop, isn't it, from 72 down to 14?
It is. So a lot of the challenges that we were facing in relation to face-to-face investigations were COVID related. I don't specifically have the stats for road checks, but I know there was some direction at a point in time where members are to cease face-to-face contact with members just due to COVID. With the Omicron out there right now too, I've heard a news story. Again, I don't know how factual it was, but they're recommending now that individuals double or triple up with masks. The other issue with road checks too is I don't let members do them on their own. So if we only have one member available, another member's working on a file or something like that, my expectation is they won't do it because it's an officer safety issue.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate this. Yeah, just if you can go back and encourage the members that you have there, how much we appreciate them and sticking with our community. It's been a lot. Myself and do want to thank you for sticking with us and getting us through this time.
Well, we definitely appreciate the community support. I know it's easy to jump on bandwagons sometimes and have the anti-police mindset, but you know, we're part of the community too, and we definitely do appreciate the support and you know, the 5-finger waves, as I put it, not the 1-finger waves that I Prince George, but that comes with the unit I work in. So, no, again, thanks for everything, and thanks for letting me do the presentation today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You invite him to stay for the rest, or?
Yeah, you can say, we have some budget deliberations.
I'm not good with numbers, that's why I'm.
That's what they all say.
Take care, thanks.
Hey, mayor report, so start on your side there, Councilman.
So January 13th, I attended the environmental meeting, 14th, the tour of the Public Works Building. 17th, sat in the Northern Health update. 18th on the phone call Minister of Health. 19th, got the Concord Board meeting, and today we had the CDC meeting. I just got the tail end of the Northern Health update. This afternoon, so.
Councilman Trey.
On the 12th, I was on the Chaco Reservoir River info session with Rio Tinto. 13th, had a Chaco Watershed Roundtable planning session, followed by an Environment Committee meeting. There's a couple of resolutions coming out of that Environment Committee meeting. Should I do them now, or go through my report and do them at the end, or what? I can do them now. So the two resolutions that we would like Council to consider, the first is that the Environment Committee recommend to Council that administration be directed to quantify the amount of unburnt fuel piles within the municipal boundaries and Vanderhoof's fire protection area. So is that a motion I make, I think? Is it?
Are we waiting till we get the reports on those? Because I know.
We're asking to get a report.
That's for the reports.
I know, but I was just,
Oh.
thinking with our committee, we were waiting until the report got to the, anyway.
So, through the mayor to council, the plan for those resolutions was actually to have those come up in writing for council at a future council meeting.
Okay. I thought that's why it was left on my desk today.
My mistake, I apologize.
Okay, so they'll come up at the next meeting or something?
February 14th, correct?
Okay. The second one has a budgetary, that's, I guess, fine for that. Okay.
That's for the purple air monitors.
Yeah.
That one, so through the mayor to council, that one should be fine, just because that's dealing with an item that's currently in the draft operating budget for 2022.
Okay.
And the use of that budget.
Leave that to the 14th. Okay. Okay, back to it. On the 19th, had a Nechaco Watershed Roundtable co-chair meeting in the morning, followed by a conf meeting at lunch. And then today we had the C2C meeting earlier and a meeting with Northern Health just an hour ago.
Okay. On January 18th, I attended a library board meeting. And I just wanted to say they currently have 14 adults in their health program. So that's very successful, and it's good to see that going ahead. And they've also stopped all in-person programming other than the CALP program in the library just due to COVID right now. That's kind of where they're at. So then on January 24th, that's today, C2C meeting.
Good.
Okay, 19th had the Concord meeting. On the 20th, I had a housing meeting group. It was, and the reason I did for Councillor Moutre is because we also have some things that he brought forward, but I was waiting for the report, so I don't have them written down. So that's why I didn't. So that's the only reason I
It's
pointed
in
that.
front of me, I read it.
I appreciate that. That's why I just didn't want to look bad. So I'm like, no, Councilor Moutre, don't do that. But anyway, definitely we had an interesting meeting and did have the opportunity to meet with a representative from Cornell, and there was there were some definite synergies. You know, there's some possibilities coming forward, maybe after we work with a couple of other communities with leads that were given from that individual. They are feeling the same pain that we are in terms of looking at the impediments to their progress when it comes to market housing. They did get some opportunities to move ahead with BC housing financing, et cetera, but that took 2 to 3 years in most of those projects to get to where they are today. So it was an interesting comparison of notes, and we've been given a few leads and talking about touching base with a few other communities, but that'll come out in the report, so I won't talk much more about that. On the 21st, met with Northern Health, talking with their community collaboration group. And it's interesting, they're working on 2 facets that I think we should have a connection with 2 of our committees. One would be housing and the other would be the attraction and retention. They're trying to narrow down to one focus, but I think after our conversation with the group, it would be really good for them to narrow that down after finding out what these 2 committees are working on. Their focus in housing would be men's housing and other aspects there. I'm just wondering, should they take that on themselves or they should continue to work with maybe council on that? Attraction, retention, obviously the health focus, but working alongside or understanding what work is being done there with the attraction, retention, or should they consider moving along on their own? They've also shared the report. I think you remember when we all met in at that point, was it the community center then? Anyway, that structure. That report's back out, being shared amongst the group, saying there's some really good input that evening. And there were some things that came out of that that still need to be followed up on. And so it was a very interesting 1 hour or 1.5 hours. And it was good because it shows that they're willing and have some resources to put towards these items and some energy. So again, it's good for us to get over silos and work together a little bit on that. Not entirely, but maybe they could come in to certain portions when we're meeting on housing, maybe certain portions when they're talking about their attraction or retention. It would be really good for us to work together on those. And then the last thing was Northern Health on the 24th today, just the update.
On the 12th, I started out at lunch listening to the CGL update, and when it got into kind of just the same old, I clicked over to the RTA Freshette update. I think that we're just finding more and more all the time that we need to stay on top of that and really understand that. On the 13th, the regional district committee meeting, we had that date, and then later on that afternoon, we had an update from Northern Health. On the 14th, I attended the works site just to take a look at where the new building would be built and how it would fit on the property. As well, on the 14th, I attended an RBA meeting. It sounds a little more optimistic, as we're going forward, and so that was good. 17th, NDI PG RAC. Yeah, it was interesting. Last year, we were oversubscribed the first two intakes. This one we were undersubscribed, so quite substantially. It was intriguing, and so the thing is, I really think that we need to make sure that we focus. My concern is that the next time around, we'll be oversubscribed and all be gone, the $2 million, and so we need to really be on top of that. 18th, met with Mr. Dix and Northern Health. The 20th, the Regional District Development Chaco had their budget meetings. And today, 24th, the CICUS community meeting. And then this afternoon, I had a regional district meeting to do with the Chaco First Nations and water in the Chaco, and I think it goes back to the discussion regarding the Freshette this year, and just with the smelter taking much longer than I thought it would take to to start up the smelter and where the power goes and where the water goes. So certainly needs to be a discussion, and certainly one that council, District Vanderhoof, needs to be very much involved with over the next 2 months on decision making going forward. Any questions for anybody? A question to you, Councillor Young. You mentioned that there were 2 things and I didn't write them down. One was a men's housing thing, and whether were you looking for feedback from the DOV regarding whether or not it should be Northern Health dealing with it, or
I think it was meeting with the committee to understand what our priority would be. Are we focusing on market housing or focusing on these other pieces? So then maybe they need to continue to work alongside us or on their own that way. But if we were fully engaged, maybe moving on that path, then they wouldn't have to do that so much. They could then shift their energies on the other. And I said, it's too soon to make a decision. I think we should meet with both these committees before, because we're working on those things to decide how to narrow your focus. They thought that would be a good idea. They're not working in silos. We should be working together on those.
no, you had one more question. What was that?
I had a question.
You one should.
The other item was just their attraction retention was on the health focus. And so we're doing, I know the committee has a broad focus, and that would be part of it. So they're wondering, should they continue to work alongside or just do their own focus? Because ours wouldn't be health specific, and theirs would be.
I don't know, really, yeah, I guess to me it certainly is valuable for them with they're really interested in both attraction and retention as well as this men's homeless, situation. I think those 2 things sometimes it's hard for us as council, where we kind of looking at the whole community to be able to, focus in on those 2 things. And we've talked about in the past that it's not only doctors, nurses at St. John Hospital, but there's a whole lot of other things to have a successful community that we need to have an attraction and retention program. So, yeah, I think just my personal feeling is that if they take the lead on it, and then turn it to us at council on the housing issue.
I think the purpose though is for us to get, it's sort of the whole idea. Remember when we talked about these committees was to bring in different groups at different times to, okay, where are you at on this?
Yeah.
What do you need from us? No, we're doing this. Okay, we will focus on this and we can bring this to the table too. Right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you that I said that should be your focus, but come and see what we're doing and we can learn from you too. So.
Excellent. Any other questions? Anybody has them? Anything? Good. Okay, building permit report.
Council, the building permit report is Ernie, if you have any questions for me. This will be the total 2021 on the far right hand side.
So if you take out 2020, which was a high year because of the camp, then we're pretty much average last year.
Yeah, I think so. Our cultural center project maybe threw those numbers off a little bit too, so we have to be a little bit careful. Also, you can see in the 2017 year, our pool was in there as well. So civic projects sometimes can skew the numbers, but it is a part of the whole construction Vanderhoof, so we have to account for those numbers. Also, some of these numbers may be not misleading, but, not captured totally is some of the projects in 2021 that are not issued until 2022, those actually go into the 2022 stat year. So, and vice versa with 2021. So just something to kind of keep in mind a little bit.
So if the building permit was issued in 2021, but construction doesn't start on the building in 2020.
Not necessarily. My numbers are when the permit was issued, not when the application was received. So, because there's lots of times when an application is received and may never be issued, so I don't account for those numbers in our system.
Any questions? Yes, Councilor Young.
Yeah, I don't want to state the obvious, but to me, I just look at the health of our report by, not the report, but our building by, like you take out those large ones because they can happen based on grants and other pieces. You know, we are still on that right track by really pushing hard to figure out what is going on. That somehow we can increase the availability of, you know, the single family dwelling, right? You can see 8, 2, 3, 2. Definitely not trending in the direction we want. And so continuing to push on that and finding ways to deal with it, that's still going to remain on the top of our priority list. So anybody wonders why we're still talking about housing? Because it's still a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what's really intriguing on that number is if you go back in our history and, you know, from about 2007 to 2017, about 10 years, that's we averaged about 12 houses, you know, and so it just, I just don't understand it. And, you know, like I don't understand how that was the number that we needed to have the average number of houses. And then all of a sudden, here we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, averaging 2, you know, kind of a thing, eh? You know, and you go like, okay, so why? You know, why in 5 years are we doing what we did in 1 year for 10 years straight? And you know, like we would be in such a different conversation if we even had, say, instead of 10, say we had another 40 houses. You know, this would be a totally different conversation. We wouldn't be, you know, I can tell you, and I didn't look today, but here just recently somebody left to just get great. Yeah, there's only one house. So one house. You know.
And it is interesting in terms of the anomalies of communities on Highway 16 that are seeing a success. We talked about it at the meeting the other day, and you know, asking staff to talk to some of their connections within those municipalities to say, okay, what have you seen in these specific circumstances that allowed this to happen? You know, we had an anecdote from the person we're speaking to from that southern community saying at one point they had some infrastructure placed within some development and those lots wouldn't sell. They finally had to sell those lots off. Not the community, but someone else at a great loss and basically in an auction. And it still hasn't been built on one of the. So this isn't just our problem, but we're trying to find out if there is a formula why certain communities on Highway 16, and it's not many, are able to be building in the way they are right now. And it has been a perfect storm that's led from 2018 to 2022 being like this. There's multiple factors, but somehow there are some that are coming out of it. And what are those conditions that maybe we can replicate if we can? So
well, it's interesting when I talk to the mayors of Smithers, you know, or those that say, well, what is it? And they have no reason why it is. So, you know, that as hard as we are trying to find the reason why we have so few, they have no understanding of why the reason they have been so successful. It's just a need, and you know, they're yeah, I don't know, but it's
so we're asking all those questions, right?
yeah,
It could be something that pops up and go, hey, that's not something we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that? You know, and a lot of it's infrastructure. We know a lot of development in Prince George is happening in areas where the infrastructure is all around and they can just infill those pockets very quickly. Anyway,
Okay. Riverside Park erosion mitigation project update.
Through the mayor to council, the recommendation is in front of you tonight on the Riverside Park erosion mitigation update. I'm here to answer any questions that council may have on this report. The recommendation on this initiative is that council authorize staff to discontinue design and permitting efforts for the time being and limit future project efforts to engagement with relevant project partners and provincial and federal agencies going forward. There are alternative options outlined inside the report as well for council to consider.
What's your thought on it?
Pretty clearly, I'd hate to see the project get shelved. I see the frustrations and the, I mean, I think moving ahead with putting a appropriate species on the riverbank is going to buy us some time. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the discontinue. I wouldn't want it to go away. I would want it to be when it's when can we go forward, and hopefully our partners can push that a little harder, right, than we're able to. There's what?
I believe it's some of the comments that we got this afternoon from our partners, our neighbors. We all fit for that.
Yeah.
So maybe I can just understand on the planting of trees. There's a thing of requiring 430 some contingency allowance. And I guess I'm not sure why, I guess I missed why there was such a large number for planting some trees on.
So through the mayor to council, the number that's cited in the report was provided by Palmer Environmental, who has been engaged on this project since 2017 at the very least. The reason for providing a $430,000 ballpark and a $130,000 contingency is we don't really know how Palmer came up with the $430,000 estimate for how much it's going to take to install stakes and then plant according to option 2 as outlined in their 2017 erosion mitigation report. So realistically, this is just best project management practices. We assigned an appropriate contingency according to the class of estimate we received, which is we don't have any kind of design to back this estimate up.
Yes.
I agree with Councillor Moutry and I think some of the others that it would be, I'm not in favor of just dropping everything and not advocating and continuing to pursue this project in whatever way that we can. I think I would just like to know, are there some mitigating things that we can do? That's a pretty steep price tag. Are there some mitigating things that we can do in the interim before we can get, a more ahead in a more substantial way? That's what I would like to understand, because it's taken a long time, I think, to get this far. And now, we have what we perceive to have our ducks in a row, other than, DFO and some of the other barriers right now. But I would just like to understand if there's some other ways that we can continue working on this or keeping it in the forefront anyway.
So through the mayor to council, the 3 options that are outlined in the report, kind of in order of what staff think is most likely to succeed and also balancing out the cost implications. Option 1 is to kind of move the project into advocacy mode, So that's meeting with DFO, meeting with Monroe, meeting with Environment Canada, and trying to find out the reasoning for barriers to this project and how to overcome those hurdles. That carries the lowest cost implication and still tries to aim with the end result of having the hard armoring solution, which is why it's the recommendation. The second option council has, as outlined in this report, is to pursue detailed design and permitting for the interim planting solution. This is the 430,000 plus 130 contingency that we don't currently have a design for. And it was Palmer Environmental's recommendation for the November 18th presentation to council, I believe, or October 18th. So the third option is to cancel the project entirely, which would mean shelving this project for the foreseeable future. There is a fourth option, which isn't outlined in this report, and that's because it was deemed to be the highest risk and least palatable of the options, and that was to go in behind the existing embankment, excavate out, and build a hard armored embankment with the plan that the current embankment will eventually erode away. And that carried several orders of magnitude cost escalation over the preferred option for the hard armoring. So realistically, the best, if council still want to see things done to mitigate erosion in the Riverside Bank, option 2 is the better option out of the bunch. It does slow down the rate of erosion. It may not necessarily completely stop it. It'll really just buy us time.
If I can, with it being a busy weekend and getting the agenda sent out on Friday, I haven't had time to really research this. When you look at the works done on the Chilako and that, I just fail to see that it would be that expensive a project. I'd like to take some time to try and look and see if that is a true actual cost or whatever, right? Because, you know, we're almost $500,000 there on a temporary solution. There's going to be other solutions out there. I think there's local companies that do this work. Let's check in and see where we're at.
I agree with Kevin. Can you refresh my memory on this, because I just glanced at this very quickly. When we say temporary, what's the time frame we think we can buy with it?
Through the mayor to council, we're thinking option number 2 will be temporary in that it's a 10 to 20 year solution, not a permanent solution.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about is, okay, this sounds like a lot of money, like $400,000 or down. I agree with Councilor Mouche that we did hear in the past that there's maybe some options where that could come down a bit. And to me, it's palatable then, because this is a major piece of our community. And if we're just going to go, oh, we couldn't do anything because it cost $400,000, and then we get a huge chunk of the next 20 years disappear. So there's no walking trails, there's no acts. I think that'd be a tragedy. And I know it sounds like a lot of money, and some people shake their heads at it, but if we can find a way to make it happen, I think we kind of have to. It's a focal point. And we've been trying to enhance that, get more tourism in that area. I would hate to see us just step away and watch it erode over the next 20 years. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So.
And the other thing I would just quickly interject there is I also would look for other sources of money. I think there's other people that do some damage on our river that maybe could do a little bit of restoration too.
Yeah, I guess to me is, you know, when I read this on the weekend and you know, when you only get one crack on the weekend and you've got a couple of trips out of town, it really makes it hard to really go through all this material that we got here today or on Friday. And I guess to me is when I read this, when I walk the bank there where it's being eroded, anywhere that there is a little tree growing, it's a jut out into the river. It's holding that bank substantially. The thing is, and I guess to me is, I just think that we've seen some groups do some riverbank mitigation here in the area, and there are smaller rivers than this, But, you know, there's got to be something that we can do that will hold that bank for the time being until we can do it, you know, because yeah, to just go into advocacy, I can tell you 13 years I've been here, you know, we've known this issue. It's been a discussion around this table at least once a year, every year. And advocacy is not doing it because we're getting the shuffle from DFO to Ministry of Environment, back to DFO, and it's not going anywhere. And there has been some people come and they have done some of these works with that same material that they put on highways to keep the water out when they go through not swamps, but you know, water things. And you know, and they showed what they could do on the bank of rehabilitating it. And it was a pretty good solution for about the same price as what this temporary one. And so I guess to me is, I just think that we need to I don't know what the word is, you know, because we've all just read it here in the last day, this report. Is there, you know, can we defer this, you know, and revisit it here and
Mayor to council, if council did want to defer this item, there's no impending deadline that's looming over our heads for this project. The only timeline that we're running up against is the limited window between when we get project approval or direction to our limited construction window.
Just further to what I was saying earlier, what you're saying, in my opinion, yeah, it's a big chunk of money, but it's not going to be cheaper 10 years from now. 10 years from now, it can be triple what that is. And right now, we have some things when it says, you know, $130,000 contingency allowance funded from the community forest reserve. 10 to 15 years from now, that reserve could be substantially different than it is now. We talked about investing in things very much like this that impact the community. So for me, it's lining up more the more I think about it to where we have to take some kind of risk like this. And yeah, it's going to hurt, but I would like us to have a little more time to reflect. And if there was any possibility of connecting with one of these groups that's done some of the work and just understanding how and what they did, to get a little more information, thinking that, yes, we can maybe knock this down a bit. But really, that's worst case scenario to me, is that's how much it's going to cost. How do we get it done? But to wait another decade, it's going to be, we won't be able to do it.
well, environmental issues never go down in price. You know, like things that we did easily 15, 20 years ago. Now, you know.
And if we defer it, I'd like to see it come back on the 14th, and we can, that would be the appropriate timeline to make those connections, right? We just defer it to the 14th?
It's like, can't be there on the 14th.
All in favor of deferring this discussion to the 14th? Thank you. Election appointments.
Through the mayor to council, there's a recommendation before you. If there are any questions, our director of corporate services is here to speak to the item.
Okay, seconder,
I'll second it.
any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Jacko Kimat Development on Riverside Park, interpretive signage.
That the application, go ahead.
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.4.
I'll move that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed you here.
You missed me, yeah.
Yeah. Is it on this topic that you want to ask a question? What's that?
question is the application for a standalone public accessible washroom? Or is it for a publicly accessible washroom that will be added to a potential building coming from the gas campsite?
Can you answer that too?
Through the mayor to council, it's a standalone building. It's not a building that's being provided by by Coastal GasLink.
There was some concept that if we get a building supplied by the gas camp, the standalone building would be redundant. It'd be better to put that money into that building. Makes perfect sense. Otherwise, you got double plumbing, the whole lot. And that would have to be specified in the grant application.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I just realized about 10 seconds earlier that I'd forgotten that I missed that. Okay,
I know we do have the resolution from the previous meeting, but I actually agree that if we have public accessible washroom in a new hangar trailer coming for sure, and Coastal GasLink is for sure going to provide it, that I do worry about making a washroom up there that isn't needed afterwards, right?
Through the mayor to council, we're still not 100% sure that Coastal GasLink will have the washroom in there. But that said, if at some point in time Coastal GasLink comes forward and says 100% for sure we're getting a building with a washroom inside it, an update can be provided to council at that time.
okay, so this year, just the letter supporting the application for $5,000.
25 grand, right?
Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. 11.5. You have a question on this one, Mr. Caller?
Not a question, but a clarification. The airport lighting is not emergency lighting. This is the standard comprehensive aerodrome lighting. There's nothing emergency about it. Okay, it would be used in emergency circumstances, but the description is wrong. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So moved, we got it.
Same.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so 12.1. The recommendation is that council hold an in-camera meeting immediately following adjournment of January 24th regular council meeting, and the meeting will be closed pursuant to the community charter to discuss labor relations, personnel matter, land matter, negotiation. C, E, and K. All persons other than the mayor, councilors, and pertinent staff be excluded. That motion. All in favor? Motion to adjourn.